Our next guest thinks positioning rather than fundamentals has been driving price action in the group this earnings season. But is Amgen bucking the trend based on this obesity drug euphoria? Does it warrant it? Jared Holz is healthcare sector strategist at Mizuho. He joins us here on set. Jared, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
In terms of this injectable drug, do we know anything about the safety profile and the efficacy of this drug as compared to Novo and Lilly's drug?
We really don't know that much about it. They haven't disclosed a ton of data on it.
Okay.
I think what we're getting this afternoon is being, perceived as very positive, that they've seen the interim results. Whatever the company has seen, they believe is positive. It warrants moving into phase 3 at some point, but we still need the phase 2 results. I think those are coming out by year end. So really, there's lack of disclosure here. The specifics are not clear, but whatever they see internally, they must like a lot.
We talked about this before when we heard about them, I think, but when it was entering phase 2, that the bar would really have to be high since they're reliable, similar drugs on the market in terms of efficacy have to be super high, or the cost would have to be much lower, I would think. It's still an injectable, so there's still that barrier. What do you think it needs to achieve in order for it to be really viable?
Well, so I agree with all that. I think it's got to be pretty close to Novo and Lilly. The bar is very high for efficacy. We don't really know what dose they're bringing forward here. Is it the high dose? Is it the low dose? If it's the low dose, where they're seeing some safety issues with the high dose. If it's the high dose, what type of efficacy versus the others? But they're clearly, what they're saying tonight is differentiation. What that means, very tough to tell. That could mean they think it's safer. They could mean that the differentiation on the fact of being less frequent of an injection. They're going for a quarterly instead of a weekly. So they think they can really get this way less frequent. Time will tell, what happens here.
Company has about 23, I'm not going to say major drugs, but significant drugs in terms of revenue, right? This story comes out. They've always traded at a trough valuation. It's probably still trading at 15 times. But does news like this set them up, not to get an Eli Lilly valuation, but to take them from a 15 multiple, maybe to the mid-20s, which would suggest the stock is ridiculously cheap here?
Great question. I think mid-20s seems super high. Lilly and Novo really didn't get those multiples until they had proved to everybody that the drug was safe and effective and that they can make it. So a lot of things had to happen right, and they did for those two. I don't think it'll get to the mid-20s. Could it creep up into the high teens just based on the hype and the euphoria going into the full phase 2 later this year as people kind of take a bet on it? Because it will be transformational if it is great and very competitive. They said tonight that they're working on manufacturing already, and all these things are trying to get sorted out. So maybe there is more upside here. I've been kind of net neutral, not net neutral, but the stock price, when we were on the last time and I came on talking about, this stock relative to Novo and Lilly didn't like as much. It's basically right back to where it was. So there could be upside if this phase 2 is really great.
So walk us through the timeline to get from here to actually being a competitor to Lilly and Novo.
Yeah, my sense on timing is if a phase 3 begins sometime next year, so a year from now, maybe this is a drug that's on the market end of 2026 into 27. So they're still very far away, right? And with every passing day, you've got Wegovy and you've got Zepbound crushing it. I mean, the Wegovy number is a little bit light. Again, expectations got ahead of themselves, I think, and you still have these supply challenges at Novo, but very hard.
Let's talk about those expectations. I'm a bit of a Novo guy over here, okay? Yeah. And so I look at 2024 for Novo. I see 24% earnings and sales growth expected, slight decel next year, trading about 37 times this year, 30 times next. You just talked about they didn't get those sort of premium multiples until they were proven. Now we're seeing a slight decel. I know they guided up for the year. If the whole story in the space, and there was a great documentary I saw a couple months ago on CNBC, Big Shot. That Big Shot.
Yeah.
Competition's coming. You come on our show every week. We talk about it. At some point, is there going to be a lot of pressure on Novo and Lilly if just one or two of these gets approved anytime soon?
I think when we look at the entire space, Novo and Lilly are dominating because they were already great existing players in diabetes. This obesity market is very tangential. It's very simple for them to kind of pivot a very similar patient population to obesity. Companies like Amgen really don't have any presence at all in diabetes. I think it's just more difficult for them to kind of say, okay, we're now going to be a preeminent player here. Could they take 5-10% market share over time, or can the totality of competitors take 10% of the market? Sure, but I feel like the dollars that Lilly and Novo have accumulated over time, how much they can spend and invest in the space is going to make it super tough. So the data really has to be excellent, I think.
I mean, the other sort of, competitive force in terms of Amgen's drug is that Novo and Lilly have other trials going on for other versions of their drugs, semaglutide and tirzepatide. I mean, for Novo, they've got the oral readout for phase 3 in the second half of 24. So if you get an oral pill, why do you need another injectable on the market? I mean,
agree. You may not. And so I think when Amgen looks at their pipeline, they're trying to kind of, maneuver their version of the drug around the existing products. And if it can be less frequent, and there's a patient population that doesn't love injecting themselves every week, maybe there's a place for it. But the results have to be good.